What's up guys, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and today I'm actually going to try and bring you guys something a little bit different than normal, and I'm going to actually try and give you guys a tournament report. Now, the reason why I decided to try and make this kind of video today was because of the fact that this past Saturday there was my locals, and it was actually a kind of special locals because of the fact that it was actually a turbo pack locals where we could have had the chance to win some turbo pack 8s. So when I went, I did, of course, want to try and win some of that Turbo Pack 8 just because of the fact that I wanted Ulti Thunder King. And because of that, I decided to try and make the best possible deck that I did have access to try and do as well as I possibly could, which, of course, that would mean that I did take my Shaddolls deck. And I just kind of wanted to just give you a little bit of a rundown of what I did run inside the main deck, as I know some of you guys might be familiar with my Clownblade Shaddolls deck list that I did post a couple of days ago, but this is actually pure Performage Shaddolls now, as I actually did cut the not the Thunder King, the Thousand Blades, because of the fact that I kept drawing into that weird one-of. So of course, this is going to be pure Performance Shaddolls, and we will be going over both my main deck, extra deck, and the side deck as well. So of course, let's enough talking about what I did, and let's just get right into the deck profile, I guess you could say. So I did go X1 in 4 rounds of Swiss. We did not have a top cut, sadly, but still I was fairly happy with going X1. I did end up getting second place with this deck, and it was still not bad because of the fact that my matchups were fairly strong, or not my matchups against things, but the matchups I played against were pretty decent decks. So of course it wasn't just all completely easy, as I did play 2 Necros, 1 Burning Abyss, and 1 Noble Knights. So just again to give you guys the premise of what I did play against in my locals, and to just kind of give you guys the deck list. Okay, so because we're playing pure Performance Shaddolls, we are running the 3 copies of the Damage Juggler, just because of the fact that we kind of use this guy to help us avoid the OTKs. I actually did avoid an OTK against what was it, Necros, because I had this card in hand and I was able to block the Valkyrie's attack, which is actually one of the biggest attacks that they can make. So of course, having the Damage Juggler there was actually really helpful, again, because of the fact that we can use it to prevent the OTK, as well as it kind of saved my butt, and it could get me my hat triggers, so I could do some pretty cool plays with that afterwards. So of course, we had the 3 Damage Juggler for that. Then we have the 2 Trick Clown, which I actually did not go into that often. Surprisingly enough, whenever I would search something with my Performance Damage Juggler, I would 99% of the time actually grab this card, just because of the fact that it was a free level 4. And there was only like maybe 1 or 2 times throughout the whole tournament where I felt that I should have grabbed Trick Clown instead, just because of the fact that he was easily recurring light fodder for our Nephilim plays. But outside of that, I will say that he was kind of lackluster in the tournament. He was alright whenever I did draw into him, as of course he is probably the best light fodder in this deck, because again, he is basically he is infinite light fodder for the deck. But again, most of the time I was actually just grabbing this card, like I said again, just to get that free summon, and so I can also go into some pretty cool synchro plays. But yeah, Trick Clown is still there, of course, because we kind of have to run it in this Performance engine. And then, of course, like I've been flashing a couple of times over that Trick Clown, we have the 2 copies of Performage Hat Tricker. Now, like I said, this is probably my best Performage monster that I did use throughout the whole weekend, just because of the fact that it's a free special summon whenever there's 2 or more monsters on the field, so I usually would just special summon in defense mode, and it would either get me an instant rank 4 play with another another level 4 on my board already, or it would just get me into my really, really big synchro plays that were actually just extremely strong throughout the whole tournament. So, of course, we did have the 2 Hat Trickers. Moving on to the Shaddolls lineup, it's pretty much the same Shaddolls lineup that you guys have been seeing me use for I don't know how long it must have been now. So we have the 3 copies of Shaddolls Falco, the 3 copies of Shaddolls Skomata, the 2 Hedgehog, the 2 Shaddolls Beast, and then of course the 2 Dragon. Now, of course, I'm never going to complain about this lineup just because of the fact that I feel it's I wouldn't say that it's necessarily the strongest, but it's the best for my playstyle, just because of the fact that we have the 3 Falcos, of course, to help us maintain our resources, and then we have just basically just good deck thinning cards in the form of Skomata, Beast, and Hedgehog, and then we have the Dragon to pop unnecessary skill drains. I will actually say that this was very, very strong against Burning Abyss, just because of the fact that I do believe both games I played him, he eventually had skill drains sometime, and it was really good to have the Dragon, just because of the fact that I had Foolish Burial to always Foolish Burial the Dragon, or find a way to get the Dragon into the grave so that I may use it to pop the skill drain. This is, in theory, here at 2 just because of Clyfort, but then again, there wasn't as much Clyfort at my locals, just because of the fact that our locals is rogue dominated. So just because of that, I also thought that 2 Dragon was important, just because again, rogues also do run back row. So that is the complete Shaddolls lineup for this deck that I am running. Moving on to the more generic support, we have the MVP of the main deck, probably. We have the 3 copies of Mathematician. Now, with Performage Shaddolls, this card becomes so much more potent just because of the fact that you can use it to send a Shaddol, or excuse me, whichever Shaddol that you basically want through the effect of Shaddol Skomata. But it can also help you by getting you to any of your Performages that you might want, just because of the fact that you can use this guy to send Performage Damage Juggler to the graveyard. So then you can subsequently banish that Damage Juggler to grab either Hat Tricker or Trick Clown, which is pretty cool because Hat Tricker, of course, is that free level 4 summon, and the Trick Clown is that recurring light monster that we really do love to abuse. So again, we have the 3 Mathematician again as the standard card for any Shaddol deck, really. And again, it's the best in this deck now just because it has just so much more uses. And it was actually kind of funny too because this is also pretty important to the Trishula play because of the fact that this plus, I believe, Glow Up Bulb and a Shadow Beast equals Trishula. So I actually did also make that play quite often during this entire weekend as well. So of course, that's also a really cool application for Mathematician. Moving on to the more generic stuff, we have the 2 copies of Effect Veiler because I did not want to get Necrons of Trishula or Dragon Trishula anytime during the tournament. So I wanted to ensure that I had some sort of protection against him, as this deck actually does have, at times, issues getting cards out of their hand. So again, just because of that, we cannot play around Necrons of Trishula as easily as we can. So I just wanted to have the 2 Effect Veilers in here to, again, just give me that protection against those. Then we have the 1 copy of Glow Bulb because, again, this helps us get into our Trishula play as well as it can help us get into our Starter play, which is the only out that we do run to Apocalypse 4 Towers in this deck. So, of course, I felt the Glow Bulb was mandatory just because of the fact that it does get us into the plays that we really want to get to. And then, of course, the obligatory BLS because basically you need this. And every time I saw it this past weekend, especially against Burning Abyss, every time I saw this, I would just win, pretty much. I would just automatically win just because of the fact that BLS is just so good. So that will be the end of the monsters. Moving on to these spells, we have our Shadow Fusions, of course. We have the 3 El Shadow Fusion and the 3 copies of Shadow Fusion. Again, like I said, my locals is personally dominated by quite a few rogue decks, and most of the rogue decks at my locals are pretty extra deck heavy. So I did want to have the 3 Shadow Fusions just to help me, I guess you could say punish them whenever they do overcommit to their extra deck when they necessarily don't have to. So, of course, that's always good, and also trying to get free Trick Clowns or Damage Jugglers into the graveyard to do things with is also a pretty nice thing to do. And then, of course, we have the 3 El Shadow Fusion because it's the best Shadow Fusion by far. So that will be our 6-card Shadow Fusion lineup. Moving on to the other things, we start off with the 1 copy of Allure of Darkness, just because, of course, it helps us dig through our deck faster. Personally, I would like to have found Rome for 3 Upstart Goblin, just because of the fact that sometimes I really found myself not wanting to get rid of that card that I do have to banish for the Allure, but realistically, I couldn't find 3 more slots for the 3 Upstart, so I basically just had to settle for the 1 copy of Allure of Darkness. Then, of course, for other one-offs, we have the 1 copy of Foolish Burial to act as our 4th copy of our Mathematician. We have our 1 copy of Mind Control for the fact that it can help us move cards out of the way so we can push for damage, as well as we can do some pretty cute things by stealing our opponent's monsters and fusing it away. Now, it was actually kind of sad because the one match I did lose to was against Performage Shaddolls, or it's not Performage Shaddolls, Performage Necros. And there was a moment in time when I had Mind Control, but funny enough, during the actual tournament, I did not have El Shaddol Onoya Tylus within my extra deck, just because of the fact that previously during the tournament when I was actually building the deck, I, for the love of God, could not find room for that Onoya Tylus. But then, of course, when I needed it the most, I didn't have it, which really bummed me out because, again, after talking with my opponent, he told me that if I did successfully make an Anointed Talus during that turn that I really wanted to with this Mind Control, I actually would have won that game. And again, just because of the fact that that was my only loss throughout the whole tournament, just again really bums me out and it really makes me wish that I possibly could have topped the whole thing. But what can you do? It is Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's why we play and we live and learn. So of course we have the 1 Mind Control. Then we have the 1 Soul Charge, which in essence is decent in game 1, but I found myself signing it out quite often in games 2 and 3. Excuse me, not even game 3, because technically I didn't even go into a game 3. Every time I won, I went 2-0, and then the one time I lost, I went 0-2, but oh well. So usually I would side Soul Charge out just because of the fact that if we constantly keep trying to abuse Trick Clown, we will be burning ourselves for quite a bit of damage, and I did not want to make that damage even worse with Soul Charge. So technically in game 1 it's fine, but in games 2 and 3 throughout my entire day I probably sat it out. So we do have the 1 Soul Charge though. And then, of course, the Raigeki, just because it's kind of like mind control in the sense that it gets past our opponent's board so that we may push for our big OTKs or our big damage. Moving on to the traps, we start off with the obligatory Shadow Core because of the fact that, of course, we have to have Core pretty much now, just because it gets us into our, basically any Shadow fusion that we want, as well as it can help us get back fusions if we ever get Necros of Brionact or Phoenix Wing Blast or something stupid like that. So, of course, we have the one Core. Then we have the one Torrential Tribute, which actually was not torrential during the tournament. I actually did swap this out immediately afterwards, after the tournament finished, just because of the fact that previously I did run Solemn Warning over this torrential. But like I said with Soul Charge, that life point cost that brought Solemn Warning to the table actually just was really, really bad. And every time I saw Solemn Warning past maybe turn 3, it was basically just a dead card by then, because I was not comfortable activating it and putting myself at a life point count that was just extremely low. So that is why I immediately subbed it out for Torrential, which is probably what I would have actually liked to see, just because of the fact that Torrential is free board clear whenever you can activate and resolve it. And then finally, of course, we have the one Emptiness, even though weirdly enough, throughout the entire day, I did not see it one time, which is really weird. But still, we had it here in the theory because of the fact that this deck can produce a lot of advantage and make big boards really quick. So, of course, having the Emptiness to protect that big board afterwards is really, really cool. So that will be it for the main deck. Moving on to the extra deck, we start off with, of course, our 3 copies of El Shaddol Nephilim. We have Nephilim, of course, because she's the best one by far, of course. We're going to be going through her quite often. So, of course, we have to have the 3 just for all those various instances when we have to have her. Then, of course, we go on into the 2 copies of Shaddol Winda. Now, it's kind of weird because of the fact that my one Burning Abyss matchup of the entire day, I did not make this once, weirdly enough. As we all probably know that El Shaddol Winda is really, really potent against Burning Abyss. But when I did play him, I actually never found the instance to make this over other plays, because of the fact that when I did play against that Burning Abyss, I found that going for Trishula plays was very strong, coincidentally, I guess. And because of that, I just never found the time to actually make Winda. I maybe made it once throughout the entire day when I had to make a Winda to push for extra damage, but outside of that, Winda, I seldom made it. Moving on to the other El Shaddolls, we have our 2 copies of El Shaddol Shekinaga. I was actually very pleased with the 2 Shekinaga because of the fact that I did find myself going into the second one quite often, just because of the fact that we do have quite a few Earths within this deck. And again, just to help us maintain our fusion plays through all of those Earth monsters, I did decide to put the 2 Shekinaga, and I did not regret it at any given time. So of course, having the 2 Shekinaga was really helpful. And then, of course, like I said, the one card I didn't technically have in the extra deck at the time, but I threw it in as soon as the tournament ended. We have the one copy of El Shaddol Onoya Tylis. Now, this was an Arcanite Magician previously during the actual tournament, but I never found the chance to make the Arcanite Magician, nor did I ever feel like I wanted to. And because of that, I felt that Arcanite was kind of a useless card in this extra deck, just for me personally. So, of course, just because that one bad instance of making this card didn't, that came up during the tournament, I decided to put it back in just again, because I do not ever want to run into that situation ever again where I wish I had an Onoya Tylis. So, of course, we have the one Onoya Tylis to round off our fusions. Moving on to the synchros, we start off with the one copy of Star Eater. This is here primarily for the Clefort matchup because we do not want to auto-lose to Apocryphal Towers. Personally, if I did have it, I would run number 52 Diamond Crab King over this, just because of the fact that for this specific deck, it's way easier to make, and it's also an auto Apocryphal Towers. But sadly, I don't have it, so I did have to settle for the Star Eater. But even though it's still decently easy to make, just because of the fact that if you have a live Glow Up Bulb in the grave and Shekinaga, you can make this. So of course, we just had to have the Star Eater just for that Apocryphal Towers out. Then we have the one Leo for whenever we have Falco and Nephilim on board, so we can make Leo to get around all those pesky targeting traps and whatnot. Then we have the one copy of Trishula. Now, I will say that in my rounds, when I did use this deck, I believe I want to say almost every single game I did make Trishula, just because of the fact that this deck can make Trishula pretty darn easy if you ever can set up a good enough Falco play, or you can set up a Global play for this. And of course, we all know because it's unbanned, it's hella strong, really. Of course, whenever I did resolve Trishula successfully, and I had a decent enough advantage afterwards making the Trishula, I usually would win. So of course, we have the one Trishula. Then finally, for the last synchro, we do have the one copy of Goyo Guardian for the instance where I do have something like a Trick Clown or a Damage Juggler and the Falco. As previously within testing, I did find myself, when I wasn't running the Goyo Guardian, I found myself missing the Goyo Guardian quite a bit because I would have boards of Falco and either Damage Juggler or Trick Clown, and I would not have the Goyo to make with those. So I would end up having to try and either force a fusion play, which I might not want to do, or I guess might leave them on board, and in my opinion, that's also not that good because of the fact that banishing removal and bouncing removal is pretty prevalent in things like Burning Abyss and Necros. So I decided to put the Goyo in. So the fact is that whenever I do run into that board, I'm not helpless. Then finally, for the last 3 monsters in our extra deck, there are 3 rank 4s. We have the E-Knight, the Castell, and the Trapeze Magician. Of course, E-Knight and Castell are fairly self-explanatory. They're both really, really good. Especially Castell in the Burning Abyss matchup, because I actually used it, I believe, twice. Or at least once, but maybe twice, to bounce back things like Seer back to the opponent's deck, which of course is really strong to help us get around that Seer Dante loop. And then of course we have the Trapeze to help us with our OTKs, as during my Noble Knight match, which was by round 1, I actually did successfully make this and I believe a Nephilim to poke exactly for I think 8,100 damage. So of course having the Trapeze as our rank 4 Shark Fortress-esque card is really, really cool. And then of course I gotta show off the Yusei token because I have this at the bottom of almost all of my extra decks now. So moving on to the the side deck. We start off with the monsters, of course. We have our 2 copies of Maxi. Now, I felt like 3 Maxi was kind of overkill for Burning Abyss, as this deck already has a very, very good Burning Abyss matchup. So I felt 3 Maxi was kind of overkill, and I didn't want to commit a 3rd Maxi in my side deck just because of the fact that when I constructed this side deck, I felt like the space was fairly tight. So I decided to cut the 3rd Maxi just because I felt it wasn't necessary, but again, 2 was just fine. Then, of course, we also have the 1 copy of Thunder King because I did not main it, and usually when I don't main it in Shaddolls, I want to try and side it just because of the fact that it's still really good because it's a light monster. And, of course, because it's a walking mistake and I currently don't have mistakes, just having a way to kind of lock down my opponent's Necros cards as well as maybe their Clefort Scout or their Satellar Knight Deneb is really, really good. Then moving on, we have 2 copies of Diffusion for the fact that I do not personally like heroes, and if I did end up running into a Dark Law deck, I wanted to have the Diffusions again to just help me get past that Dark Law, because you can technically use your Shadow Fusion to get a free summon off of the Dark Law, but the fact is that Dark Law simply just doesn't care, and he's going to make you neg some anyway. So I just really, again, just wanted to have some kind of good out to Dark Law, so that's why I put in Diffusion. And of course, it's also really good in the mirror too, so it just adds a little bit more versatility to these cards. Moving on, now we go into our actually fairly heavy trap side deck lineup. We start off with the 3 copies of Fairy Wind, although I never did side it in because I did not play Cliff Forts. I had it in there for the theory, as well as I also wanted to have this for the Bro Senju matchup, just because of the fact that they have tanky macro dimensional fissure and a lot of other continuous floodgates. So I also had this in for that matchup just because of the fact that Yo Senju is also fairly prevalent at my locals. So again, I just wanted to have the 3 Fairy Winds just in case I ever did run into those decks. But again, sadly, I never ran into either of those. So the Fairy Winds is basically useless the whole weekend. But oh well. Moving on, we have our 2 copies of Imperial Iron Wall just because of the fact that some people at my locals, hint hint, were running Cosmo, and personally, even though this deck technically has a good Cosmo lineup, or Cosmo matchup, just because our best monster beats their best monster, I still wanted to have good sideboard for it, and I felt Lancia wasn't as good just because of the fact that Lancia only stops them for a turn, while this continually stops them. So again, I just really wanted to have the continuous effects of Iron Wall over Lancia for this specific side deck. Then, moving on, we have some pretty general hate, I guess you could say. We have 2 copies of Breakthrough Skill for things like Satellar Knights and Necros. Sadly, in my 2 Necros matchups that I did play, I never saw either of these cards, even though I did side both in both times. But it was there in the theory that it's good to help us stop our opponent's Manju, Senjus, and Necros of Trishula. And then also having the Graveyard ability to help us stop our opponent's Necros of Unicorn so that we may get our El Shadow Nephilim plays off properly. Then, for the last couple of traps, we have 2 copies of Decree because Decree is really good and we only do run about 3 traps. So, having the Decree in the Yosenju, Satellar Knight, and Burning Abyss matchup was really, really good. And then, of course, finally, we have the 1 Crush card to help us blow out things like Necros and Clefort. It's actually kind of funny because both Necros games that I did play, during Game 2, both games, I did open both with, I opened both of those games with Crush card virus, which is really cool. And I did also open a way to make it live. So, of course, we have the 1 Crush card to round off our side deck. Well, alright guys, I hope you did kind of enjoy this first time tournament report. I don't know if I'll do this again. I might if you guys show that you guys did, of course, enjoy the content. As again, this is something kind of new that I just wanted to try and see if you guys would like. So again, please let me know what you guys thought of this video and as well as how you guys thought of my Performage deck list. And again, I hope you all did enjoy. And as usual, this is Kyurem from the Trinity of Lift, and I'll see all of you guys later. Peace out. Bye-bye.